Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. I never believed in angels and demons. Not until that night in Bavaria. Trust me, when you stare evil in the face, you'll want to run straight to the nearest church the next morning, if you survive to see morning at all. The call came on a Tuesday in Berlin. Triple rate for a security detail. Vatican representative, rural Germany, 24 to 48 hours. I'd left the Marines for this kind of work. After 8 years in Afghanistan and Iraq, private security paid better than government service. I'm in, I said. 40 minutes later, I was in a black SUV heading southeast with Dermont Simpson and Matthew Calton. Dermont sat in the passenger seat, methodically checking his Heckler & Koch .416, Taiwanese-American, ex-Army Ranger, best shooter I'd ever seen. Matthew drove, his Boston accent filling the silence with nervous chatter. "So we're babysitting a priest?" Matthew said. "We get paid to stand there and look intimidating," I replied. "Easy money." Dermont glanced back. "Nothing paying triple rate is easy money." 3 hours later, the house emerged from the trees. 3 stories of dark stone and timber, 18th century, windows shuttered, moss-covered walls. A black sedan with Vatican plates sat outside. The silence hit me immediately. No birds, no insects, just wind through the trees. The front door opened. A man stepped out, short, maybe 60, wearing black clerical clothing. His face was weathered, deeply lined, eyes holding that 1,000-yard stare I'd seen in combat veterans. "Gentlemen," he said in accented English. Italian. "I am Father Damien Sidow. Thank you for coming." The interior was cold and unwelcoming. The air smelled of mildew and something sweet and rotten. Father Sidow led us to a sitting room with a crucifix on the wall and candles burning on a makeshift altar. "Before we begin," the priest said, "I must know, are any of you men of faith?" I shook my head. "Raised Catholic. Haven't been to church in 15 years. Father Sidow nodded. "What I am about to show you will test everything you think you know about reality. Your job is simple but critical. No matter what you see or hear, you must maintain your positions. Protect me while I work, and ensure the woman upstairs does not leave this house." "What woman?" Dermont asked. "Come," the priest said. "I will show you." We climbed a narrow staircase. The temperature dropped noticeably. By the second floor, I could see my breath. Father Sidow stopped before a heavy wooden door. Low humming came from behind it. "Steel yourselves," he said, then opened the door. The room was bare except for a metal frame bed bolted to the floor. On that bed, secured with chains, was a woman. She looked about 30, pale and gaunt, wearing a white gown. Her hair hung in matted tangles. But her eyes, they were completely black. Not just the pupils. The entire eye, from corner to corner, was the color of wet tar. The humming stopped. Her head turned toward us with mechanical precision, and her mouth split into a smile that was all wrong, too wide, showing too many teeth. "New lambs for the slaughter," she said. And the voice was not one voice but several, speaking in perfect unison. I stepped backward involuntarily, hand moving toward my sidearm. Father Sidow closed the door. "Her name is Anna Friedman. 3 weeks ago, she was a schoolteacher in Munich. Now she is host to something ancient and malevolent. I have been sent by the Holy See to perform an exorcism. You ensure I can complete it." "Complete it?" Matthew's voice cracked. "What's stopping you?" "They will come," the priest said simply. "When I begin the ritual, they will come to stop me, to free what is inside her." He pulled out a photograph showing 7 bodies in the forest. Eyes open, mouths frozen in screams, skin covered in strange burns. "This is what remained when the sun rose last week," Father Sidow said. "Whatever possesses them cannot survive daylight, but during darkness, they are relentless." "What exactly are we dealing with?" I asked. "A demon, an ancient spirit called Abzu, a bride of envy and malice, waiting for her promised one. If the exorcism fails, if she escapes, or if I am killed, she will be free. And what follows?" He shook his head. "The world is not ready." We spent 2 hours preparing. Dermont and I secured the perimeter. 50 yards of open ground before the forest began. Good killing ground. Matthew set up motion sensors and communications. He positioned himself on the first floor facing south. I took the second floor, covering north and east, staying close to where Father Sido would work. As the sun sank, the priest moved through the house, sprinkling holy water at every threshold, hanging crucifixes at every window, placing blessed salt across doorways. "How long will the ritual take?" I asked. "Hours, perhaps all night." He paused, looking at me with haunted eyes. "Mr. Clifford, when they come, can you pull the trigger? Can you shoot what looks like innocent people?" I thought about Afghanistan. The child soldier with explosives strapped to his chest. The hesitation that cost my friend Alan his legs. The choice between morality and survival. "If they're trying to kill us," I said, "I can pull the trigger." Full darkness came at 8:47. The temperature plummeted, frost forming on windows. From Anna's room came low laughter, feminine and terrible. "It begins," Father Sido said, entering the room and closing the door. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. I scanned the tree line with night vision goggles. Then, at 9:07, I saw them. 8 or 9 figures emerged from the trees slowly, silently. Men and women in regular clothing, jeans, sweaters, a postal uniform. They walked with their arms at their sides, faces blank. "Contact," I said into my radio. "Multiple persons approaching from the north." "I see them too," Matthew responded. 4 more from the south. At 30 yards, I activated the exterior lights. The figures didn't react, didn't pause, just kept walking. "This is a restricted area," I shouted. "Turn back now or we will use lethal force." No response. They reached 20 yards. I centered my rifle on the lead figure, an older woman in a floral dress, gray hair and a bun. 15 yards. "Brad," Dermont's voice came through the radio. "I need authorization." From Anna's room, Father Sido's voice rose in Latin prayers. The walls vibrated. The approaching figures stopped simultaneously. Then their heads tilted back, mouths opening wide. A high, keening wail came from their throats. And their eyes, every single one, turned black. Pools of absolute darkness. Then they charged. "Weapons free!" I shouted and opened fire. My first burst caught the grandmother in the chest. 3 rounds, center mass. She stumbled backward, blood spreading across the dress. But she didn't fall. She kept coming, moving faster despite the wounds. I fired again and again, putting 8 rounds into her before she finally collapsed 10 feet from the house. Gunfire erupted. Dermont's rifle barked in controlled pairs. Matthew's shotgun boomed. The possessed kept coming. I dropped 2 more, but others reached the walls. Glass breaking downstairs. Something slammed against the front door repeatedly. "They're trying to break in!" Matthew shouted. "I've got 3 at the kitchen window!" Scraping sounds at my window. Fingers appeared on the sill. A face rose into view. A man in a business suit, blood covering his shirt from bullet wounds, but pulling himself up with mechanical strength. Black eyes fixed on me. "Let her rise," he said calmly. "The bride awaits her promised one." I put 2 rounds through his forehead. From Anna's room came a new sound. Her voice, but deeper. Ancient. "Yes, they come for me. They will free me, and my beloved will arrive on wings of storm and fury." A crash from downstairs. "One's inside. Kitchen door gave way." I sprinted down. Matthew backed out of the kitchen, shotgun raised. A man in postal blues moved with jerking motions, chest torn open but advancing anyway. "Salvation comes," he said in that wrong, multi-layered voice. "Through union, through release, through the promised one's embrace." Matthew fired. I put a burst into the man's head. The body dropped, twitching. "Jesus Christ," Matthew whispered. "What are they?" More glass shattered. 2 bodies pushed through the living room window, heedless of jagged edges tearing their flesh. We fell back, firing. A teenage girl took 5 rounds before collapsing. A heavy-set man got within arm's reach before Matthew's shotgun ended him. "Second floor," I ordered. "Fall back!" We retreated upstairs. The motion sensors were going crazy. "How many?" Dermont called. "More than we planned for," I said, reaching my window. They were everywhere. Dozens emerging from the forest, walking in horrible synchronization. An entire village, possessed, converging on the house. "Oh God," Matthew whispered, "there's too many." From Anna's room, a scream, not human, not animal. The walls shook. Every light flickered. "He calls!" Anna's voice shrieked. "My beloved calls! Release me!" Father Sido's voice rose. "In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti, I command you." The front door exploded inward. More possessed poured through. I fired down the stairs, dropping 3, reloaded, fired again. For everyone we killed, 2 more appeared. "They're on the roof," Dermont shouted. "I'm compromised. They're coming through the attic." A possessed woman lunged at me with inhuman speed. I sidestepped, pushed her down the stairs. 2 more were behind her. Matthew swung his empty shotgun like a club. I grappled with a man whose strength was impossible, whose black eyes showed no pain, no humanity. "The bride," he hissed. "She must be freed. The union must occur." I shoved my pistol under his chin and fired. Then I heard it. Thunder. But wrong. Too rhythmic. And beneath it, howling from everywhere and nowhere. I looked out the window. The sky was changing. Dark clouds spiraled inward above the forest. Lightning flashed, not white, but deep crimson. And in that light I saw them, not dozens, hundreds, an entire tide of possessed humanity, walking in perfect unison. "Matthew," I said quietly, "radio Dermont. Tell him to fall back. Now." The radio crackled with Dermont's voice, desperate. "There are more coming. Dozens, no, hundreds. They're coming from every direction." I ran to the eastern window. The forest was emptying. A mass of bodies, a tsunami of possessed flesh, moving as one organism. Some walked, others crawled. A few moved on all fours with speed that shouldn't be possible. Above them, the storm grew. Crimson lightning intensified. In the thunder, I swore I heard words, ancient and terrible. A sound from Anna's room silenced everything, something vast and old speaking through her throat. "He comes, my beloved comes, and you will bear witness to our union." The first wave reached the house. They came like a flood, unstoppable and endless, pouring toward us with terrible purpose. The real nightmare had only just begun. They hit us like a tidal wave breaking against rock. The first wave, the dozens we'd already seen, was nothing. A test. A prelude. Now came the hundreds. They emerged from every direction simultaneously, a coordinated assault that defied explanation. From the north, south, east, west. Possessed bodies converging with mechanical precision, moving as one vast organism driven by a single malevolent will. "Contact on all sides," I shouted into the radio. "Matthew, Dermont, what's your status?" "Engaging south perimeter." Matthew's voice crackled back, punctuated by shotgun blasts. "They just keep coming, Brad. I drop 5 and 10 more take their place." "North side's the same," Dermont added, his rifle firing in controlled bursts. "This isn't sustainable. We don't have enough ammunition for—" His transmission cut off with a burst of automatic fire. I was at my second-floor window, firing into the mass approaching from the east. My rifle barked steadily. 2 rounds, shift target. 2 rounds, shift again. Bodies dropped, but the tide didn't slow. They trampled over their own fallen, clambering over corpses with those dead black eyes fixed on the house. "Conserve ammunition," I ordered. "Controlled pairs only. Make every shot—" Matthew's scream ripped through the radio. Not a shout, not a curse, a scream of pure terror. "Matthew!" I keyed frantically. "Matthew, report!" Static. Then sounds, wet, tearing sounds. Multiple voices speaking in that horrible unison. "Witness, witness the union. Salvation comes." Then silence. My blood ran cold. "Dermont, Matthew's down. Matthew's down." "I heard!" Dermont's voice was tight with controlled panic. "I'm trying to reach him, but they've got the exterior completely surrounded. Brad, we need to fall back inside now." "Do it! Get inside and lock everything down!" I fired my last rounds into the approaching horde and pulled back from the window. Through the broken glass I saw them, so many of them. A sea of possessed humanity, all walking in perfect synchronization, arms at their sides, faces blank except for those eyes. Those terrible black eyes. Dermont burst through the front entrance, slamming the heavy door behind him. His face was splattered with blood, not his own. He threw the bolt, braced a wooden beam across it, then turned to me with haunted eyes. "Matthew's gone," he said flatly. They pulled him into the trees. I saw..." He stopped, swallowed hard. "There were at least 20 on him. I couldn't... There was nothing I could do." Before I could respond, something hit the door. Hard, then again, and again. Methodical pounding that made the ancient wood groan. "We can't hold the first floor," I said. "Too many entry points. We consolidate upstairs, protect Father Sido while he finishes the ritual. How long does he need?" From Anna's room above, we heard Father Sido's voice rising in Latin, powerful and commanding. And underneath it, Anna's voice, or Abzu's voice, laughing. "As long as it takes," I said grimly. The windows exploded inward simultaneously, east, west, south. Possessed bodies poured through, heedless of the jagged glass tearing their flesh. A woman in a nurse's uniform crawled through, her abdomen laid open by broken glass, intestines trailing behind her. She didn't even look down, just kept crawling toward us with mechanical purpose. "Upstairs!" I shouted. "Now!" We retreated up the narrow staircase, firing down at the flood of bodies filling the first floor. I counted 15, 20, 30, then stopped counting. They just kept coming, climbing over each other, filling every space. We reached the second floor landing and I kicked over a heavy dresser, sending it tumbling down the stairs. It took out 3 possessed, but the others simply climbed over the obstacle. Dermont slammed the stairwell door and threw the bolt. "That won't hold long." He was right. Immediately, fists began pounding on the other side. The door shuddered in its frame. "We just need to buy time," I said, reloading my rifle with one of my last magazines. "Father Sido needs..." A crash from above. Then another, and another. I looked up at the ceiling, realization dawning with sick horror. "They're on the roof." "How?" Dermont stared upward. "How did they get up there?" The answer came seconds later when I ran to the eastern window and looked out. They were climbing. Not using ladders or ropes. Just climbing. Hands and feet finding impossible purchase on the stone walls, bodies moving with spider-like coordination that violated every law of physics and human anatomy. Dozens of them, scaling the exterior walls on all sides, heading for the roof and the third-floor windows. A face appeared in the window directly in front of me. A teenage boy in a soccer jersey, eyes black as tar, moving on all fours across the vertical surface like gravity didn't exist. "Let her rise," he said calmly through the glass. "The promised one comes." I put 2 rounds through the window. The boy fell, but 2 more were already replacing him. "They're everywhere!" Dermont shouted from the opposite window. "Brad, they're..." Glass shattered throughout the house. 3rd floor, 2nd floor, everywhere simultaneously. The coordinated assault was overwhelming our defenses through sheer impossible numbers. The stairwell door buckled inward, wood splintering. Hands reached through the gap, clawing blindly. From the floor above came crashes, screams in that unified voice, and Father Sido's prayers intensifying. "Exorcizo te, omnis spiritus immunde, in nomine Dei Patris Omnipotentis." "We need to get to him," I said, moving toward the stairs leading up. But possessed bodies were already descending from the 3rd floor. A middle-aged man in coveralls, a young woman in a business suit, an elderly woman with a walker she no longer needed, all moving with unnatural speed and coordination. We were trapped between floors, caught in the middle. Dermont and I pressed back to back in the narrow hallway, forming a 2-man defensive position. The corridor was barely 6 feet wide. Good for us, limited their ability to swarm. "Controlled fire," I ordered. "Pick your targets," my rifle barked. Dermont's joined it. Bodies dropped. But for everyone that fell, 2 more pushed forward over the corpses. The hallway was becoming choked with the dead and dying. But still they came. A possessed woman got within arm's reach before I could stop her. She lunged with inhuman speed, fingers hooked into claws. I sidestepped, used her momentum to throw her into two others behind her. They tumbled down the stairs in a tangle of limbs. My magazine ran dry. I dropped it, reached for another, found only two left. Running low on ammunition. Same here. Dermont fired 3 more rounds. We need to fall back. To where? I shot back grimly. There is nowhere to fall back to. The stairwell door finally gave way, exploding inward. Possessed bodies flooded through like water breaching a dam. 10, 15, 20, all converging on our position. We fought hand to hand. No choice. My rifle became a club. Dermont's knife flashed in brutal arcs. The narrow hallway worked in our favor. They couldn't surround us, had to come at us in a compressed front. But we were tiring. My arms burned, my lungs screamed, sweat and blood made my grip slippery. A possessed man in postal uniform grabbed my rifle, tried to wrench it away. I let him have it, drew my sidearm and shot him point blank. The body dropped. I retrieved my rifle, slammed the stock into another's face, felt bone crunch. "The door!" Dermont shouted. "Anna's door!" I glanced back. The heavy wooden door to Anna's room was partially open, and through the gap I could see Father Sido standing beside the bed, soaked in sweat, crucifix raised high. And Anna. She was floating, actually floating 3 feet above the bed, chains hanging broken beneath her. Her body was rigid, arms spread wide, and from her throat came sounds that weren't remotely human. Guttural, ancient syllables that made my ears ache. "We have to get in there," I said. "Protect the father while he—" A possessed woman broke through our line, got past Dermont's guard. She went straight for Anna's room, moving with terrible purpose. "No!" Father Sido's voice cut through the chaos. "Do not let them interrupt. I am at the critical—" The woman lunged through the doorway. Anna's floating body rotated to face her, and the chains hanging from Anna's wrists suddenly whipped out like living things, wrapping around the possessed woman's throat. The woman was yanked off her feet, pulled into the air, and then the chains tightened. There was a wet snap. The body dropped, neck twisted at an impossible angle. "Jesus Christ," Dermont whispered beside me. Anna's head swiveled toward us, just her head, rotating a full 180 degrees while her body remained facing away. Her black eyes fixed on me, and when she smiled, it was the smile of something that had never been human. "Bradley Clifford," she said in that layered, resonant voice. "Do you remember Kandahar?" My blood turned to ice, "Do you remember the village elder? The one who trusted you? The one you promised to protect?" "Shut up," I growled, raising my rifle. "You heard him on the radio, begging for help, and you sat in your comfortable position 3 kilometers away, following orders while his family burned. I said shut up! Alan trusted you too. Trusted you to make the right call. And now he has no legs. How many people have suffered because of your choices, Bradley? How many have died because of your failures?" Father Sido's voice cut through. "Do not listen. It feeds on guilt, on doubt. Your failures are human. Its evil is eternal. Do not give it power over you." But Abzu wasn't finished. Anna's body drifted closer, chains dragging across the floor with a metallic scraping sound that set my teeth on edge. "I am Abzu," the demon proclaimed, Anna's voice now completely subsumed. "The bride of envy. I am every jealous thought, every bitter resentment, every failure that haunts you in darkness. I am the shadow of what you could never be. And my promised one comes for me. He comes to make us whole." The temperature in the house plummeted. Frost spread across the walls in intricate, beautiful patterns that looked almost like writing in some dead language. "He comes," Abzu whispered, almost tenderly. "Can you feel him? The storm of his rage, the thunder of his love." The walls began to shake. Not from the possessed. This was something else. Something outside. The entire structure groaned and creaked, timbers straining against a pressure that seemed to come from all directions at once. "Dermont," I said quietly, not taking my eyes off Anna's floating form. "We need to—" The western wall exploded inward, not from battering, not from force. It simply shattered, stone and wood blasting into the room in a shower of debris. and through the gap came more possessed, but these were different. They moved on all fours, spines arched backward at angles that should have paralyzed them, crawling across floor, walls, and ceiling with insect-like precision. What the? Dermont's rifle tracked one crawling across the ceiling directly above us. The creature dropped, landing on Dermont's back. He went down hard, the thing's weight driving him to his knees, hands clamped on his shoulders. A man's hands, but with strength far beyond human. I spun, fired, hit the possessed in the head. It dropped, but 3 more were already coming through the broken wall. "Get up!" I hauled Dermont to his feet. "We need to—" The floor above us exploded. Possessed bodies rained down through the ceiling, tangled in shattered wood and plaster. They landed in heaps, then immediately rose and began advancing with that same mechanical precision. We were surrounded, completely. Possessed closing in from all sides, above and below. The walls themselves seemed to be dissolving as more poured through every opening. Father Cito's prayers reached a fever pitch. "In nomine Iesu Christi, impero tibi, abzu, egressus est," Abzu shrieked. Anna's body convulsed, black smoke pouring from her mouth and eyes. The possessed in the room all stopped simultaneously, their heads turning as one toward their mistress. Then, in perfect unison, they spoke. "Let her rise. The promised one comes. Salvation, through union." A new sound cut through everything else. A roar from outside that made the previous thunder seem like whispers. Dermont and I fought our way to the shattered western wall and looked out. What we saw defied comprehension. The sky was wrong. The clouds had formed a massive spiral, rotating with impossible speed. And from the center of that spiral descended something that made my rational mind simply stop. A tornado. But not any tornado that had ever touched Earth's soil. It was perfectly cylindrical, 4 meters wide, descending from the crimson-lit sky with mechanical precision. The surface wasn't wind and debris. It was darkness itself, solid and writhing, shot through with veins of pulsing red light that looked disturbingly organic. And the eyes. God. The eyes. Inside the swirling darkness, dozens of massive pale yellow orbs floated freely, each one the size of a car, all moving independently, searching. As I watched in paralyzed horror, several of those eyes rotated toward the house, toward us. The thing saw us. From its depths came a sound, not wind, not voice, but something between. A vibration so deep it bypassed hearing entirely and resonated in my bones, in my skull, in the soft tissue of my organs. Abzo! The name stretched out, distorted, filled with hunger and terrible alien love. Behind us, Anna's body arced backward, spine bending at an angle that should have broken it. Her scream was ecstasy and agony combined. "My beloved, yes! I am here! Take me! Complete our union!" The tornado moved toward us. Where it touched the forest, trees simply ceased to exist. Not torn apart, not uprooted, but erased. The earth itself was scooped away in massive chunks, leaving a perfectly smooth furrow of bare rock in its wake. It was coming straight for the house, straight for Anna, straight for us. "Brad," Dermont said, his voice eerily calm. "What do we do?" Before I could answer, the wall behind us exploded. Possessed bodies, dozens of them, poured through. But these weren't trying to stop us. They were moving toward Anna, forming a circle around her floating form, joining hands. "Witness," they chanted. "Witness the union. Witness salvation." Father Cito stood in the center of it all, crucifix raised, face set with grim determination. "This is it. The final moment. I must complete the ritual now." A possessed man grabbed Dermont from behind, yanking him backward. "Dermont!" I lunged forward, but 3 more grabbed me, hands like steel vices on my arms and legs. I watched in horror as Dermont was dragged toward the broken western wall. He fought, thrashed, landed several solid hits, but there were too many. Their combined strength was inhuman. "Brad!" he shouted, genuine fear in his voice for the first time. "Brad, help me." I struggled against my captors, but they held firm. More hands grabbed me, pulled me down. I was drowning in bodies, in clutching fingers, in black eyes and dead faces. Through the press of bodies, I saw Dermont reach the wall. Saw his eyes go wide as he looked down at the 3-story drop. Saw him try to brace himself. Saw the possessed push him through. His scream cut off abruptly with a sickening crunch. "No!" The word ripped from my throat, raw and primal. The hands released me suddenly, all of them, simultaneously. I stumbled forward, gasping, and realized why. The possessed weren't interested in me anymore. They were all turning toward the western opening, toward the approaching tornado, arms raised in supplication. I was alone. Completely alone. Matthew was dead. Dermont was dead. It was just me and Father Sidau, and we were about to watch the end of the world. The tornado was close now. So close. The sound of it was deafening, a sustained roar that made thought nearly impossible. The walls of the house began to tremble, then shake violently. Plaster cracked. Beams groaned. Father Sidau's voice somehow cut through the noise. "Mr. Clifford, I need you now!" I stumbled toward him, past the ring of possessed, and saw what he needed. Anna, Abzu, was fighting him. Her floating body was twisting, chains whipping out like weapons, trying to reach him. He was holding her back with the crucifix pressed to her forehead, but his strength was failing. His arms shook. Blood ran from his nose. "Hold her," he commanded. "I cannot maintain contact and complete the prayer. You must hold her still." "How?" I shouted back. "She's floating! Do it!" I didn't think. No time. I just moved. I lunged forward and grabbed Anna's body, or tried to. The moment my hands touched her, pain lanced through me. Burning, freezing, agony beyond description. Every nerve ending in my body screamed. But I held on. I wrapped my arms around her floating form, locked my hands together and held on with everything I had. Abzu's head rotated to face me, and her smile was triumphant. "Foolish man. You think you can hold me? You think your guilt-ridden hands have any power over—" Father Sidau pressed the crucifix harder against her forehead. "In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti, I command you." The tornado hit the house. The entire southern wall vanished. Not collapsed, vanished. Pulled into the vortex in an instant. The suction was incredible. Furniture, debris, possessed bodies. Everything not bolted down was yanked into the screaming darkness. I held Anna. Held her with every ounce of strength I had left, even as my body was pulled horizontal by the wind, even as my fingers went numb from the pain, even as I felt my grip slipping. Father Sidau planted his feet somehow, impossibly maintaining his position, and shouted the final words of the exorcism. "Abzu, in nomine Jesu Christi, impero tibi, vade." And through it all, through the pain and the wind and the apocalyptic roar, I heard a voice. Not Abzu's, not the promised one's. Anna's voice, small, weak, but human. "Please," she whispered. "Please, help me." The walls began to tremble. The floor buckled. The ceiling started to tear away, and in the center of the swirling darkness outside, those massive yellow eyes focused entirely on our position. The promised one had arrived. The tornado consumed everything. I held Anna's convulsing body as the world tore itself apart around us. The wind wasn't just wind. It was a living thing, a hungry thing, pulling at my clothes, my skin, my very bones. My arms screamed in agony, muscles tearing from the strain, but I didn't let go. Couldn't let go. Father Sidau's voice rose above the chaos, powerful and unwavering. "Deus, creator et defensor generis humani, respice super hanc famulam tuam. Drive out this ancient evil, liberate this soul." Abzu fought back with everything she had. Anna's body twisted in my grip, joints bending in ways that should have shattered bone. The chains still attached to her wrists whipped around wildly, one catching me across the face, opening a gash from temple to jaw. Blood ran into my eye, but I held on. "You cannot win!" Abzu's voice thundered through Anna's throat, layered with 1,000 screaming souls. "He is here! My promised one! Our union is inevitable!" Through the gaping hole where the southern wall had been, I could see it fully now. The entity Father Sidau had called the Promised One. The tornado had grown, expanded, now easily 6 meters wide and towering into the crimson sky like a pillar connecting Earth to some terrible heaven. And those eyes. God, those eyes. There were more than I'd first thought. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds, floating in the swirling darkness, all different sizes. Some small as basketballs, others massive as houses. They moved independently, searching, focusing, and every single one was now trained on our location. On Anna. On Abzu. The sound that came from the entity was beyond description. Part roar, part voice, part fundamental vibration of reality itself. It spoke in a language that predated human words, that bypassed the ears and resonated directly in the brainstem, in the primitive parts of the mind that remembered when humanity huddled in caves and feared the dark. Breed! Calm! The remaining possessed bodies that had been scattered throughout the house, the ones that had been climbing the walls, breaking through windows, fighting their way through debris, all stopped simultaneously. As one, they turned toward the stairs, toward us, and began ascending with renewed purpose. "They're coming!" I shouted to Father Cito. "More of them! I know!" His voice was strained, desperate. "I need more time." But time was the one thing we didn't have. Footsteps thundered on the stairs, dozens of them, all moving in perfect synchronization. The possessed were converging on the second floor, drawn by Abzu's call, driven by the Promised One's hunger. The first wave reached the landing, 10, 15, 20 bodies pouring through the doorway, all with those black eyes fixed on Anna's floating form. "Let her rise," they chanted in unison. "The Promised One comes, salvation through union." They rushed forward, hands outstretched, trying to reach Anna, to pull her away from me, to free their mistress. I couldn't fight them. Both my arms were locked around Anna, holding her against her supernatural strength. I was completely defenseless. The first possessed, a woman in a torn dress, grabbed my shoulder, nails digging into flesh. Another seized my arm, pulling, trying to break my grip. More hands joined them, dozens of hands, all pulling, tearing, ripping. "Father," I screamed, "do it now. Whatever you're going to do, do it now!" Father Cito pressed the crucifix harder against Anna's forehead, his hands shaking from the effort. Holy water dripped from his fingers, sizzling where it touched her possessed skin. "Just a little longer. Hold her just a little." Anna's body arced violently, nearly breaking my grip. Her head rotated toward me, black eyes boring into mine, and when she spoke, it was with cold, intimate knowledge. "Bradley Clifford, you think holding me makes you a hero? You think this redeems you for Kandahar?" The possessed were pulling harder now, tearing at my clothes, my skin. I felt my grip slipping. I felt fingers being pried loose one by one. "Shut up," I growled through gritted teeth. The village elder's name was Rashid. His wife was Amina. Their children, 3 daughters and a son, were named Fatima, Zara, Layla, and Omar. You remember their names, don't you? You made yourself remember, as penance. My grip faltered for a split second. How did she know that? How could she possibly? You watched the smoke rise from their home. You heard their screams on the wind. And you did nothing because following orders was easier than being brave. More possessed poured into the room. The ones from the 3rd floor. The ones from outside who had finally broken through. 30, 40, 50 bodies cramming into the space, all clawing their way toward us with mechanical determination. I couldn't. Alan lost his legs because you hesitated. Rashid lost his family because you obeyed. Matthew and Dermont died tonight because you led them here. How many more will die because of you? Bradley? How many more failures will you collect? "Don't listen to her," Father Cito commanded, his voice cracking with strain. "She speaks poison. She twists truth into weapons." But something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. Because part of what she said was true. Part of it lived in the dark places of my mind where I kept my failures locked away. The doubt, the guilt, the certainty that I was never enough, never fast enough, never brave enough when it mattered most. The possessed were everywhere now, a mass of bodies surrounding us, pulling at me from all sides. I was drowning in them, in their hands, in their black eyes. My left hand slipped from Anna's body. "No!" Father Sidao shouted. "Don't let go! You must not—" But another part, a smaller, harder part, forged in Afghan deserts and Iraqi streets, recognized this for what it was. A tactic, psychological warfare. Break the enemy's will, and you break the enemy. I looked at Rashid's face in my memory, at Amina, at their children, at Alan in his wheelchair, at Matthew being dragged into the darkness, at Dermont falling from the broken wall. All of them. Every failure. Every death. And I made a choice. "You're right," I said quietly, then shouted it. "You're right!" Abzu's eyes widened slightly. "What?" "I failed them. All of them!" I wrenched my left hand back around Anna's body, grabbed my own wrist with my right hand, locking my grip. The possessed pulled harder, but I held on with everything I had. "Rashid! Amina! Their children! Alan! Matthew! Dermont! I carry all of them! Every single failure! Every single death!" The floor beneath us cracked, huge fissures spreading across the ancient wood. The entire structure was starting to give way. "Then why fight?" Abzu hissed. "Why struggle? You know you will fail again. You always fail." "Because that's what it means to be human," I shouted in her face, even as the possessed tore at my arms, even as I felt my shoulders dislocating from the strain. "We fail. We make mistakes. We live with guilt, but we keep going. We keep fighting. And right now, I'm fighting for Anna. For this woman whose body you stole. I won't let go. I won't." For the first time, I saw something in those black eyes that wasn't confidence. Fear. Father Sidao seized the moment. "Yes, hold her. Whatever happens, don't let go." The ceiling directly above us began to splinter, cracks spreading like spiderwebs across the plaster. He began the final prayer, the ultimate exorcism, his voice rising to match the roar of the tornado. "Exorcizo te immundissime spiritus, omnis incursio adversari, omnis legio, in nomine Domini nostri Jesu Christi." The ceiling exploded. Not tore away, exploded. The entire roof lifted off in one massive piece, boards and beams and shingles spiraling up into the vortex like leaves in a hurricane. We were completely exposed, open sky above us, except it wasn't sky anymore. It was the tornado, the swirling mass of darkness and crimson lightning, directly overhead. Rain lashed down, but not water. This was black, thick, viscous, and where it touched skin, it burned like acid. I felt it hitting my face, my arms, eating through my shirt, but I didn't let go. The possessed closest to us were lifted off their feet, sucked straight up into the maelstrom. They didn't scream, just raised their arms in worship as they disappeared into the black mass above. "Witness!" they cried even as they were consumed. "Witness the union, salvation through—" Their voices cut off as their bodies disintegrated in the wind. More were pulled up, 10, 20, 30. The suction was incredible, pulling everything not anchored to the ground. Furniture, debris, bodies, all spiraling up into the darkness. The tornado moved closer, descending, the base now touching what remained of the house itself. Where it made contact, the structure simply ceased to exist. Not torn apart, but erased, pulled into non-existence. Through the chaos, I saw the remaining possessed still trying to reach us, fighting against the wind, clawing their way forward with inhuman determination. But one by one, they lost their grip and were yanked upward, pulled into the screaming void. The walls around us began to shudder violently. Cracks spread like lightning across the plaster, chunks falling away to reveal the skeleton of ancient beams beneath. The entire structure groaned, a sound like a dying animal, as the tornado's base touched the eastern side of the house. Wood splintered, stone crumbled. The eastern wall simply ceased to exist, pulled into the vortex in seconds. A possessed man, the last one still on his feet, lunged at Father Sidao from the side, hands reaching for the priest's throat. I couldn't help, couldn't move. Both arms locked around Anna, holding on against the wind and her thrashing. The priest didn't flinch. Without breaking his prayer, he swung the crucifix sideways, striking the possessed across the face. The man recoiled as if burned, flesh sizzling where the blessed silver had touched, then was yanked backward by the wind and pulled screaming into the tornado. "Now! Father Sido roared, his voice raw and breaking. In nomine Patris, et Filii, et Spiritus Sancti, Abzu, I cast you out. He slammed the crucifix against Anna's forehead with his full weight. The reaction was immediate and catastrophic. Abzu threw her head back and screamed, a sound that felt like it was tearing holes in reality itself. Black smoke exploded from Anna's mouth, from her eyes, from every pore of her body. It poured out in a torrent, thick and oily, writhing as if alive. The smoke coalesced above us into a shape, vaguely feminine, beautiful in a terrible way, with features that hurt to look at directly. Anna's body went rigid in my arms, every muscle locked, her back arching so violently I heard vertebrae pop. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, jaw dislocating with a wet crack, and more smoke poured out. Black as ink, smelling of sulfur and decay, and something else. Something ancient and wrong that made my sinuses burn. The smoke form grew larger, more defined. I could see a face now, sharp cheekbones, eyes that burned with crimson fire, a mouth full of too many teeth. Abzu, in her true form, no longer hidden behind Anna's flesh. No! The demon's voice came from everywhere and nowhere, shaking the remaining walls. My beloved, my promised one, we were so close! Anna's body suddenly went limp in my arms, dead weight. I nearly dropped her, my exhausted muscles screaming in protest, but I adjusted my grip, cradling her against my chest. Her eyes, when they fluttered open for just a second, were blue again. Human blue. But then they rolled back, consciousness fleeing. Is she? I started to ask Father Sido. She lives, he shouted back. But we are not finished. Hold her. Do not let go. The smoke form writhed above us, growing larger, tendrils reaching down toward Anna's unconscious body, trying to re-enter, trying to reclaim its host. Father Sido raised his crucifix higher, began another prayer, this one in a language I didn't recognize, harsh syllables that seemed to cut the air like knives. The last of the possessed, maybe a dozen still in the room, all turned toward the smoke form as one. The bride! They screamed in unison, their voices layered and distorted. The bride rises! Witness! Witness! They rushed forward, not toward us but toward the smoke form itself, arms outstretched as if to embrace it. The first one to reach it, a young woman in a torn business suit, was engulfed immediately, her body dissolving into ash within seconds, fuel for Abzu's desperate attempt to maintain form. The others followed, throwing themselves into the smoke one after another, after sacrificing themselves to their mistress. Bodies turned to ash, then the ash itself was pulled upward into the tornado above. The tornado's suction intensified impossibly. I felt my feet begin to slide across the floor, my body tilting toward the gaping void where the eastern wall had been. I planted my boots, trying to find purchase. But the floorboards were slick with blood and rain, and that black viscous liquid still falling from above. A chunk of the ceiling the size of a car door tore free and whistled past my head, missing me by inches before disappearing into the vortex. Father Sido grabbed my shoulder with his free hand, anchoring himself to me, using my weight to keep from being pulled away. Together we formed a chain, him holding me holding Anna, all of us barely resisting the pull of that screaming void. Almost there, Father Sido shouted directly into my ear. One more prayer, one final command, and she will be... The northern wall exploded inward, not from the tornado, from something else. Through the breach came a wave of debris. Trees, boulders, pieces of other buildings, all caught in the tornado's outer rotation and flung inward like missiles. A tree trunk 3 feet thick smashed through where we'd been standing a second before, gouging a crater in the floor. We stumbled aside, nearly lost our footing, nearly lost everything. The remaining possessed, only 5 left now, were lifted off their feet by the wind, pulled upward screaming. Witness! They cried even as they were consumed. Witness the union! Salvation through... Their voices cut off as their bodies disintegrated in the maelstrom above. The entity, the promised one, reacted. Abzu's smoke form stretched upward, reaching toward those massive yellow eyes floating in the tornado above. Tendrils of darkness extended from her form, desperate, grasping. My beloved, no, don't leave me, Take me. Please, complete our union. The Promised One's response shook reality itself. The tornado descended further, the base widening, and from within its depths came an appendage. I don't know what else to call it. A tendril of solid darkness, thicker than a man's body, lined with those pulsing red veins that looked disturbingly organic. It reached down toward Abzu's smoke form with terrible purpose. For a moment, just a heartbeat, I thought we'd failed. That the union would happen after all. That everything we'd done was for nothing. The tendril touched Abzu's smoke form, and instead of embracing her, it began to tear her apart. Abzu's scream changed, from triumph to confusion to horror in the space of a breath. No! Beloved, what are you? No! This isn't how it... The tendril wrapped around her, and where it touched, her smoke form began to disintegrate. Not dissolving, being consumed, absorbed, destroyed. Without a host, you are nothing, Father Siddau shouted, his voice raw with effort and realization. Without Anna's body to anchor you, you cannot maintain form in this realm. The Promised One does not embrace you, it feeds on you. The tornado consumed her, pulling her smoke form apart strand by strand, devouring her essence like a starving animal finally finding prey. Abzu's final scream was pure existential terror. The sound of something ancient and powerful, realizing too late that it had been betrayed by the very force it had called to itself. No, beloved, please, I am your bride, The scream cut off as the last of her dissipated into the tornado's maw. Silence. For just a second. Perfect. Absolute silence. Then the entity screamed. Not in triumph, in agony, in rage. The roar that came from it felt like the end of the world. A sound so vast and terrible that it didn't just fill the air, it replaced it, becoming the only thing that existed in that moment. Because Abzu, its promised bride, the one it had crossed dimensions to claim, was gone. Destroyed. Consumed by its own hunger in a grotesque parody of the union it had sought. The tornado exploded outward in a shockwave of pure destructive force. The walls around us disintegrated. The floor beneath us buckled and heaved, then simply gave way. I felt my body lift off the ground, still clutching Anna, still refusing to let go, weightless for a moment. Then everything came apart. I was torn away from her, not from weakness, but from the sheer impossible force. My grip broke. Anna's body was ripped from my arms and I was thrown backwards, spinning, tumbling through chaos. No sense of up or down, just spinning darkness and the roar of annihilation. Something hit my head. A beam, a piece of wall, I couldn't tell. Pain exploded behind my eyes, white hot and absolute. Debris whirled around me, planks of wood, chunks of stone, everything that had been the house now reduced to projectiles. I felt impacts, ribs cracking, shoulder dislocating, skin tearing. Through failing consciousness, I caught glimpses. The tornado, pulling everything up into its maw. The house, completely gone. Just foundation and earth. Father Siddo's black robes whipping in the wind as his body was lifted. Anna's white gown, a flash of pale fabric tumbling through the air. And then, impact. I hit the ground hard. So hard. My vision went white, then black, then white again. Pain. Everywhere. Everything. I tried to breathe and couldn't. Tried to move and couldn't. Tried to stay conscious and... darkness. Complete and absolute darkness. And silence. Warmth. That was the first thing. Warmth on my face. Gentle. Soft. I opened my eyes slowly, each lid feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Blue sky, clean, clear, beautiful. The sun was rising, painting the horizon in shades of gold and pink. Its light touched my face with tender warmth, completely at odds with the hell I remembered. I lay on grass. Actual grass. Dew-covered and soft beneath me. For a long moment, I just breathed. In and out. Each breath painful, broken ribs definitely, but possible. I was breathing. I was alive. Slowly, carefully, I tried to move. My left arm didn't respond. Dislocated shoulder. My ribs ground together with each breath. Cuts and bruises covered every inch of exposed skin. But I was alive. I managed to roll onto my side, suppressing a scream as broken bones shifted. Pushed myself up onto one elbow, looked around. The destruction was total. The house was gone. Completely gone. Where a 3-story structure of stone and timber had stood, there was now just nothing. Raw earth, churned and torn. The foundation had been ripped away. Even the basement was exposed. Walls collapsed inward. Debris was scattered across 100 yards in every direction. Splinters of wood, chunks of stone, twisted metal, and bodies. So many bodies. The possessed lay everywhere, motionless. Some were partially buried in debris. Others lay in the open, limbs at unnatural angles. From where I lay, I could see their faces. Their eyes were closed. Just closed. Normal. Human. Dead. All of them dead. "Father?" I croaked, my voice barely a whisper. "Father Sidao?" Silence. Just wind moving through the trees. Birds singing their morning songs as if nothing had happened. As if the world hadn't almost ended. I tried again, louder, though it made my ribs scream. "Father! Anna!" Nothing. I forced myself to sit up fully, the world spinning around me. Waited for my vision to clear, then looked more carefully. There, maybe 30 feet away. A dark shape partially hidden by debris. I crawled toward it, dragging my useless left arm, leaving a trail of blood through the dew-wet grass. Every movement was agony, but I forced myself forward. It was a piece of black cloth, torn vestments, Father Sidao's vestments, but no body. Just the cloth, caught on a splintered beam. I looked around frantically, pain forgotten in sudden desperation. "Father, where are you?" My voice echoed across the clearing, but no answer came. I crawled further, searching. There, another 30 feet away. White fabric. A piece of Anna's gown, mud-stained and torn. But no Anna. I searched for what felt like hours, maybe it was hours, crawled through the debris field, checking every shape, every shadow. Found more scattered clothing, scraps of black cloth, pieces of white fabric. Found bodies of the possessed, dozens of them, eyes closed, faces peaceful in death. But no Father Sidao, no Anna, no sign of what had happened to them after the tornado hit. No indication if they'd been thrown clear like me, if they'd been pulled up into the vortex, if they'd survived at all. Nothing. Just pieces. Just fragments. Just questions I would never be able to answer. Eventually, exhausted and in agony, I collapsed back onto the grass in the center of where the house had been. Lay on my back, staring up at the perfect blue sky. The sun was fully up now, warm and bright. A perfect autumn morning. Beautiful. Peaceful. Impossible. Had it really happened? I looked at my hands, covered in blood, dried and crusted, mixed with dirt and ash. Real blood. Real injuries. I looked at the destruction around me. Real debris. Real bodies. Real devastation. But where was Father Sidao? Where was Anna? Were they alive? Dead? Taken by the tornado? Wandering injured in the forest? Unable to call out? I didn't know. I would never know. The thought settled over me like a weight, pressing down on my chest harder than any broken rib. I had held on. I had fought with everything I had. I had refused to let go even when every instinct screamed at me to run. And in the end, I didn't know if it had been enough. I didn't know if I'd saved them or failed them. I didn't know if Anna was free, or if Abzu had somehow survived, somehow found a way back. I didn't know if Father Sidao had lived through that final moment when the house came down. I just didn't know. A sound in the distance broke through my thoughts. Faint at first, then growing louder. Helicopter rotors. Multiple aircraft approaching fast. I turned my head, even that small movement sending spikes of pain through my neck, and saw them appear over the tree line. 3 black helicopters, unmarked, flying in formation. Someone was coming. Rescue. Cleanup. Whatever came after nightmares like this. I wanted to get up, to wave them down, to shout for help. But I couldn't move, could barely breathe, could only lie there on the grass, broken and bleeding as they circled overhead. The helicopters began to descend, their rotor wash stirring up dust and debris, sending leaves skittering across the churned earth. I closed my eyes. Let the sun warm my face one more time. Let the sound of the approaching helicopters fade into background noise. I survived. Anna might have survived. I might have. Father Sido might have survived. Or they might both be dead. Or taken. I stared into the abyss, and somehow walked away. When you've held the line against forces beyond comprehension, you don't get neat answers. You don't get closure or peace. The helicopters landed somewhere nearby. I heard them touch down, heard doors opening, heard voices shouting. But I kept my eyes closed, kept the warmth of the sun on my face.